Good evening, everyone, and let's start. Today, we'll be talking about monopoly, in particular, single price monopoly or simple monopoly pricing. So we'll review some conditions and efficiency in the monopoly market. The first concept that I would like to review is about market power. So it is saying that a firm has the ability to raise price above marginal cost without fear that other firms will enter the market. So this is what it means by market power. So referring to the last chapter about perfect competition, a firm has no market power in a perfectly competitive market because they have to accept or take the prevailing price in the market as given. They do not have the influence towards the market price. But here in this chapter about monopoly, the firm is able to set its own profit maximizing price. It has market power because it has the ability to set market price. So this is also why we say that a monopolist is a price searcher. The profit maximizing condition for the monopolist is still the same. Marginal revenue equals to the marginal cost. So this will be used for the firm to find its profit maximizing quantity and price. Okay, so some sources of market power is listed below here. So some of them will be restricting the entry of the firm due to some regulation, let's say patents. Suppose you are a pharmaceutical company and you have invented a new drug. Then the government may give you a patent such that other firms cannot replicate your formula to produce this drug. Okay, so this will make you the only firm in this market or this drug, okay, say within 20 years of time. And there are also some sources of market power that did not restrict your entry due to regulation. However, there's simply no firms entering the market. So this is related to the idea of natural monopoly or economies of scale. So imagine this with an example in Hong Kong, right? Electricity supply. So if you as a potential firm would like to enter this market, it will be incurring a high setup cost for you to do so, right? You need to buy those equipment and also to build a factory to supply electricity, right? However, existing firm has already been produced at a very large scale. So you as a potential entrant, it is very hard for you to capture a large market share and to cover your high setup cost, right? So even when there's no restriction to enter the market, there are still no firms who like to enter the market, right? So it's not profitable to do so. So this is what it means by natural monopoly. Okay, so other sources of market power are also put down here for your reference. As we have just mentioned, the monopolist is using the profit maximization condition, MR equals to MC, to determine its profit maximizing point. So this is why we would like to understand the marginal revenue of the monopolist. So it is divided into two cases. Under discrete case where quantities has to be integers, then marginal revenue is calculated as follows. Marginal revenue of the nth unit equals to total revenue of producing n units minus total revenue of n minus 1 units. So the difference in total revenue in this case. Whereas in the continuous case, where quantities are perfectly divisible, then we'll have something as follows. The marginal revenue curve have twice the slope of the demand curve. So if demand is in the form P equals to A minus BQ, then marginal revenue is A minus 2BQ, right? We multiply the slope in front of Q by 2. So this is how we can derive the marginal revenue. As we have mentioned, a monopolist has the ability to set its own profit maximizing price and quantity. So this is why it is said to be a price searcher. So how can a monopolist set its own profit maximizing price and quantity then? Actually, there are 4 universal steps that you can follow through so that you can solve problem involving simple monopoly pricing. Okay, so step 1 is to derive the demand curve if it is not directly given to you in the question. Second step is to obtain the marginal revenue curve by multiplying the coefficients in front of Q by 2. Or if it is in the discrete case, then we find using total revenue of the nth unit minus total revenue of n minus 1 units. And then step 3 is to determine the profit maximizing point using the MR equals to MC profit maximizing condition. So using the graph below here, marginal revenue equals to marginal cost at this point. So the corresponding quantity at this profit maximizing point will be the profit maximizing output of the firm. And for step 4, to set a monopoly price according to the demand curve at this profit maximizing output. Okay, so at this quantity, the corresponding price as suggested by the demand curve will be here, P star as the profit maximizing price. So following these 4 universal steps, it could serve as a guide for you to find out the profit maximizing quantity and price of the firm. Right, so the next thing is about the welfare analysis under simple monopoly pricing. Under monopoly, we actually have a smaller total economic surplus, okay? Because as you can see, under simple monopoly pricing, the market quantity is lower than the efficient level, right? So this is why there's underproduction in the market and there will be inefficiency exist. At the market quantity, the total economic surplus would actually be this trapezium, right? Compared with the point where total economic surplus is maximized at the efficient point, then there will be the deadweight loss here, the unattained total economic surplus, the red triangle. And finally, the remark here, a monopolist has no supply curve. So why is that the case? Referring to the diagram on top here, even when we have the same profit maximizing quantity and marginal cost curve of the firm, if the monopolist is facing different sets of demand and MR curve, then the corresponding price set would be different, as you can see. So this is why there's no one-to-one relationship between price and quantity supplied of the firm, and it would depend on the elasticity of demand. So at this point of time, it's a good opportunity for me to review the related concept about markup. So it is the price that the firm sets above marginal cost in percentage term. So P minus MC divided by MC is kind of the definition of markup. So there's also a derived form of markup, which is involving the formula of elasticity of demand. So -1 divided by 1 plus ED. So both can help you calculate the value of the markup. The takeaway from this slide is that if the monopolist is facing a less elastic demand, then you'll have a larger markup, while if it is facing a more elastic demand, then a smaller markup, as you can see in the graphs here. All right, so that's all for what I'd like to review, and we'll move on to question 1. All right, so let's go through the statements one by one. The first one, its product must have no substitutes as it is the only seller of the product of the kind. So imagine the example of a railway company in Hong Kong, okay? So obviously there's only one railway company in Hong Kong, MTR. However, there are substitutes to MTR services, let's say other transportation, buses, minibuses, taxis, and so on. So as you can see, there are substitutes to the products provided by the seller, just that there are no close substitutes to it. Okay, so this is why A is false. How about for B? A monopolist still faces non-price competition, so it will be true. So again, using MTR as an example, it is still making advertisements to attract customers to use its services. So this will be an example of non-price competition engaged by the firm. C, a monopolist can increase the price without losing any customers. So this would be false because a monopolist is setting its own profit maximizing price using the profit maximization condition MR equals to MC. It is not the case that the firm is trying to set an infinitely high price, right? So C is false. And finally, for D, cartelization as a monopoly is likely to be successful if the market demand is price elastic. So what does it mean by cartelization or a cartel? So imagine there are a few firms in the market and they're sitting together saying that, oh, why don't we just form a cartel or a union to act as a monopoly in this market? So by doing so, the benefit of forming a cartel will be the markup that they can enjoy as a monopolist in this market. Okay, so if the cartel is facing a more elastic demand, then the markup will be smaller. Thus, the benefit from sustaining the cartel will be lower. Okay, harder to sustain the cartel or the union. So D would be false. So if you learn a little bit about market structure in high school, then you know that the market structure with a few dominating firms is oligopoly. And you will learn more about the idea of cartel or cartelization if you take intermediate microeconomics in the future in a topic about oligopoly or game theory. Yeah, so that's all for this one, and we'll move on to question 2 and 3. Okay, so question 2, we are going to find the quantity produced by the firm and also the corresponding profit. So actually, we are dealing with a continuous case of simple monopoly pricing for this problem. So you can follow the 4 universal steps that I've just outlined to you at the recall part. Okay. So step 1 first, to derive the demand curve. However, it is already directly given here, so nothing to worry for step 1. And we can move on to step 2, to obtain the marginal revenue curve by multiplying the coefficients in front of Q by 2. So this is why we have the marginal revenue equals to 30 minus 2Q. Remember, we multiply the coefficients in front of Q by 2. Step 3, to find the product maximizing quantity using the product maximization condition, MR equals to MC. So if you plot everything in GeoGebra, right, the demand, marginal revenue, and all the marginal costs, you are able to find the point where MR equals to MC, which is point A here. The corresponding quantity as suggested by point A will be the product maximizing output, 10 units. And finally, step 4, to charge a monopoly price according to the demand curve at this product maximizing output. Okay, so as you can see, the corresponding price as suggested by the demand curve is $20. Okay, so point E will be giving us the information about the quantity and price. Right, so this is the first part of the question. And to calculate the profit, recall that it is total revenue minus total cost. So for total revenue, price times quantity, product maximizing price 20 multiplied by product maximizing quantity of 10, then we have 200 as the total revenue. And for total cost, it is decomposed in 2 parts. Fixed cost is 100, already given the question here. And for the total variable cost part, it would be area under the marginal cost curve until the product maximizing quantity. So this blue triangle would be the total variable cost. Using a polygon function in GeoGebra, you can find the area is 50. So all the numbers are here, and we can calculate the monopoly profit is $50. How about question 3 to find the markup for the widget? So we have 2 methods to calculate the markup, right? So the first one is to use the definition. which is kind of the percentage change P minus MC divided by MC. Whereas the second method is to use the derived form involving the elasticity of demand. So let's start with method 1 first. So we have the product maximizing price as 20, and what is unknown is the marginal cost at the product maximizing quantity. The marginal cost of the Q unit equals to Q, as mentioned in the question. So this is why the marginal cost of the 10th unit, the product maximizing quantity, will simply be 10. And now we are ready to calculate that. Product maximizing price 20 and the marginal cost is 10. Then we can calculate the markup as follows, 100%. How about method 2 about the derived form? Because we need to use the elasticity of demand. So this is why we need to calculate that first. Recall that elasticity of demand can be calculated as delta Q over delta P times P over Q. Okay. Delta Q over delta P is simply 1 over the slope of the demand curve. And the slope of the demand curve is actually -1. Okay. Right, so this is why we have the first fraction as 1 divided by -1. And for the second fraction, it is the product maximizing price divided by product maximizing quantity. So 20 divided by 10. So we can calculate the elasticity of demand to be -2. So plug that in back into the markup formula. Then we are able to calculate that to be 1 or 100%. Right, so that's all, and we'll move on to next problem. Please take a look. For this problem, we are dealing with a discrete case of simple monopoly pricing. So this is why I would like to use Excel with you for this problem to understand the calculation. All right, so let's start. Yeah, let me clear everything here, and then I will calculate with you. Yeah. Let me clear everything here, and then I will do the calculations with you. Right, so question 4 is to find the product maximizing quantity and product maximizing price. So again, we'll follow the 4 universal steps that I've just mentioned. Step 1 is about the demand curve or demand schedule for this discrete case. It's already given, then nothing worry about that. And step 2 is to obtain the marginal revenue column. Okay, we'll use the definition of marginal revenue in the discrete case. Marginal revenue of the n units. Marginal revenue of the n units equals to total revenue of n units minus total revenue of n minus 1 units. Okay, so we'll use this to calculate the marginal revenue. So this is why we need the total revenue first. So how can we get that? Total revenue is the price multiplied by the quantity, right? So for the first unit, 18 times 1. Since this logic applies to other units, right, which can just pull down, or to use the shortcut key, Control plus D, default down to obtain the whole total revenue column. And for marginal revenue, okay, for the first unit, it's simply 18. For the second unit onwards, is the current unit minus the previous unit, right? The marginal revenue of the second unit equals to total revenue of 2 units minus total revenue of 1 unit. And we can obtain the whole marginal revenue column by pulling down. For the marginal cost, it will be constant at $8, okay? As mentioned in the question here, constant marginal cost, $8. So we can move on to step 3 to apply the profit maximizing condition to find out the quantity, okay? So as far as the marginal revenue is greater than or equal to the marginal cost, then it will be profit maximizing to increase production. And as you can see, up to the third unit, the marginal revenue is still greater than the marginal cost, but not for the further units. So this is why the profit maximizing output is 3 units. And finally, step 4, to charge a monopoly price according to the demand schedule at this output of 3 units. So the corresponding price suggested by the demand schedule is $14. Okay, so we have the profit maximizing quantity and price found like this. How about question 5? To find the efficient quantity and the corresponding deadweight loss in this monopoly market. So what is the efficient outcome? Which is to expand production as far as the marginal benefit is greater than or equal to the marginal cost. So where is the marginal benefit here? It is actually the price column here. Why? For continuous case, we connect the information between price and quantity demanded using a straight line or a curve. Here, in the discrete case, we just connect the information about price and quantity demanded in a table form, right? So this is why the price column is actually the marginal benefit. As far as the marginal benefit is greater than or equal to the marginal cost of $8, then it will be efficient to serve that unit, right? So as you can see, the marginal benefit until the 6th unit is still greater than or equals to the marginal cost. So it is efficient to serve all 6 units. Okay, efficient quantity is 6. And finally, how can we calculate the deadweight loss? The deadweight loss is simply the unattained total economic surplus compared to the efficient outcome. Okay, so at the profit maximizing output, only 3 units is produced, but under efficient outcome, we should produce 6 units. So this is why there will be some unattained total economic surplus for Q equals to 4, 5, and 6. So we'd like to sum these unattained economic surplus up. So how can I do that? It will simply be the marginal benefit minus marginal cost for these units. Okay, so for the 4th unit, it is 12 minus 8. Because by producing this unit, the consumers can gain the marginal benefit of 12, while it requires a marginal cost of 8 only. Okay, so this will be the unattained total economic surplus for Q equals to 4. And we'll sum this kind of MB minus MC for the remaining 2 units, or you can just pull down to obtain the information here. Okay, so the deadweight loss is simply to sum up all these unattained total economic surplus for the 3 units. Okay, you can just use the sum function. Okay, type equals SUM and then drag the cells that you would like to add up, and then Excel will help you calculate some of the cells here. Okay, so the deadweight loss in this question is $6. So understanding how we can calculate the deadweight loss under discrete case in Excel will be quite useful and convenient. Okay, as let's say in the regular quiz where you need to sum up many units of this kind of unattained economic surplus, like more than 10 or 15 units, then it will be more convenient for you to do so using Excel. Okay, so a caveat for this kind of discrete case is that even when the question gives you a functional form of the demand curve, you should never write the marginal revenue as A minus 2BQ. We should use the discrete case where marginal revenue of the nth unit equals to total revenue of n units minus total revenue of n minus 1 units. Okay, so be aware of that. Okay. Right, so that's all about this problem, and let me go back to the slide and give you some time to take a look at question 6. Okay, if you go a few slides forward, you will be able to see the remaining parts of this question. Okay, so spend time to have a look at parts A to D first. Okay, so let's start with parts A and B to find the profit maximizing price and the deadweight loss. So we will be performing the 4 universal steps under a continuous case here. So step 1, to find the demand curve. However, it is directly given, then we can move on to step 2 to find the marginal revenue. Okay, multiplying the coefficient in front of Q by 2. As you can see, the marginal revenue is this expression. Step 3 is to apply the profit maximization condition MR equals to MC to find the profit maximizing output. So if you put everything in GeoGebra, then marginal revenue equals to marginal cost at this point A here. The corresponding quantity would be the output that you're looking for, 255. Okay, and then finally, step 4, to charge a monopoly price according to the demand curve at this output of 255. So point B will be giving us the information, profit maximizing price 845. And for the deadweight loss, I'm not explaining that in detail as we have reviewed just now. The deadweight loss under simple monopoly pricing will be the triangle here. So using a polygon function in GeoGebra, you can find the area, 10,837.5. And for part C, if the government imposes a price ceiling at $700, what will be the profit earned by the monopolist? Okay, so again, the firm would be using the profit maximizing condition, MR equals to MC. So if there's a price ceiling of $700, what would be the marginal revenue? First of all, this price ceiling is effective because it is set below the profit maximizing price 845. And because the price ceiling is at $700, this means that if the firm would like to sell one additional unit, it will be selling at the price of 700. So the marginal revenue is 700. As far as the marginal cost of production is lower than 700, then the monopolist will continue to produce. So this is why we are going to find the point where marginal cost equals to 700. Okay, point E will be giving us the information. We have the quantity is 310. At this price ceiling of 700, there's actually excess demand in the market, okay, or shortage here. And finally, to calculate the profit, total revenue minus total cost, right? So total revenue, market price of 700 multiplied by the quantity of 310. And for the total cost part, nothing special. We just plug in the market quantity of 310 back into the total cost function directly given the question. Then we'll have the expression underlined here. Then after calculation, we will have the monopoly profit 6,100 under this price ceiling. And for part D, if the government wants to impose a price ceiling that completely eliminate deadweight loss, then what would be the profit of the firm? Okay, so we are considering the efficient point. We need to set the price ceiling at the socially optimal quantity. Referring to the graph here, it would be point C, the efficient point where the demand intersects the marginal cost. Okay, so we need to set a price ceiling at $760 so that the market would be driven back to the efficient outcome. And the corresponding efficient quantity is 340. To find the profit, again, nothing special. Total revenue minus total cost. Okay, price times quantity, 760 multiplied by 340. For the total cost part, just plug in the quantity for 340 back into the total cost function underlined here. Then we will have the total cost of production. And ultimately, we have the monopoly profit 25,600. All right, so I'll give you a little bit more time to have a look at parts E to I. Okay, so for part E to H, there are some changes in the production cost of the firm, right? So we'd like to see how the profit would change in these cases. So for part E, if the marginal cost is increased by $20, then what will be the profit of the monopolist? Originally, the marginal cost expression is 2Q plus 80. With the increase in marginal cost by $20, then the new marginal cost will become 2Q plus 100. And correspondingly, the coefficients in front of Q here would change from 80 to 100 to align with the increase in marginal cost. Okay, so to find out the profit maximizing point of the firm, then we just demonstrate the 4 universal steps. So I'm not going into the details. So just follow everything I have just explained to you, then you are able to find out the profit maximizing quantity at 250 and the profit maximizing price at 850. Okay, the same technique to calculate the monopoly profit. Okay, total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue, profit maximizing price 850 multiplied by profit maximizing quantity 250. And for the total cost, we need to plug in the quantity of 250 back into the new total cost function. Then we are able to find the result. Monopoly profit in this case is 35,000. For part F, if there's an increase in fixed cost by $20,000, what would be the profit of the monopolist? Actually, even when there's a change in fixed cost, it will have no impact on the marginal cost, right? So this is the key point that we need to recognize. So if we apply the profit maximization condition MR equals to MC, then it will be the same point as we have found in part A. Okay. So how does the total cost function change? Originally, the fixed cost is 90,000. With the increase in fixed cost by 20,000, then the fixed cost here become 110,000. Okay, so nothing special. We just put all the numbers back into the corresponding total cost function to calculate the profit. Then we have the result. The monopoly profit is 20,050. And specifically, the increase in fixed cost will reduce the profit by the same amount. And for part G, if there's a $20 of per unit subsidy to the monopoly, what will be the monopolist's profit? Okay, so the $20 of per unit subsidy will actually lower the cost of production, right? So this is why the new MC would change to 2Q plus 60, okay, reduced by $20 per unit. And to align with the reduction in marginal cost due to subsidization, the coefficient in front of Q in the total cost function changes from 80 to 60. And again, using the set of new MC and the original MR, then we are able to find out the profit maximizing point of the firm. Okay, quantity is 260, price is 840. And we are able to calculate the corresponding monopoly profit with the same technique, 45,200. For part H now, instead, the subsidy of $20 is given to the consumers. What will be the profit of the monopolist? We can recognize the equivalence between subsidizing producers and consumers unless the price received by sellers or the price paid by buyers spread into the negative quadrants. So after recognizing this equivalence, we actually do not need to calculate anything, and we can answer this part. The monopoly profit in part H is the same as in part G. Subsidizing consumers is the same as subsidizing the monopoly. In this case, the monopoly profit is 45,200 again. And finally, for part I, if the government wants to completely eliminate deadweight loss, what will be the per unit subsidy to be provided? It would be the gap between marginal revenue and marginal cost at the efficient quantity, okay, which is the vertical distance CJ here. So the vertical distance between CJ will be 760 minus 420, which gives us the per unit subsidy of $340. Why is this the right amount of subsidy to eliminate that weight loss completely? If we provide a per unit subsidy that is equal to the gap between MR and MC at the socially optimal quantity to the consumers, then the demand and the marginal revenue curve will shift upwards by the amount of this unit subsidy. And ultimately, the new MR will intersect the MC at the socially efficient point C here. So this is why we need to impose the subsidy, which is equal to the gap between MR and MC at the socially optimal quantity. So that's all for this lengthy problem, and we will move on to the past exam problem, which is also the last question in this tutorial. All right, so for question 65 and 66, we need to find the profit maximizing quantity, profit maximizing price, and the dead weight loss in this monopoly market. So again, already repeated a few times. So we just follow the 4 universal steps, and then we are able to find out the profit maximizing point. So I just put the result here as your checking. Okay, I'm not going into too much of details, and just take the results as given here. Okay, so what is more intriguing will be the remaining parts. So question 67, if the government forces the monopoly to charge at its marginal cost, what will be the lump sum payment to support the monopoly such that it would not exit the industry? Okay, so we recall the exit condition, which is if the profit in the short run is positive, then the firm will stay in the market, whereas if the profit in the short run is negative, then it will exit the market in the long run. Okay, so this is why the government would like to provide a lump sum payment such that the profit, taking into account the lump sum payment, is at least 0. So this is why we have the following equation, right? The highlighted component here is a profit, right? Total revenue minus total cost. Adding the lump sum payment will equal to 0. So this is the target. And in the next step, I just distribute the components into 2 brackets for further analysis. So for the first bracket, total revenue minus total cost. So what is that? Total revenue will be price times quantity, while total variable cost will be marginal cost times quantity. Why total variable cost is marginal cost times quantity? Because we have a constant marginal cost fixed at $4, right? So if you're trying to find out the total variable cost, which is simply the area below the marginal cost, then it will be the rectangle here, calculated as marginal cost times quantity. So this is why the total variable cost under a constant marginal cost will be MC times Q. Okay, so if you factorize this expression a bit, then you will have P minus MC times Q. Since the government forces the monopoly to charge at its marginal cost, right? So we have price equals to marginal cost under marginal cost pricing. Then this expression, total revenue minus total variable cost, is simply 0. So what remains in this line is lump sum payment equals to fixed cost. Okay, so what is the fixed cost of production? It will be 10,006 because this is the part of cost that does not vary when output changes. Or simply, you still need to pay this amount when producing 0 units. So 10,006 will be fixed cost, which is also a lump sum payment required in this question. Question 68, if the government instead imposes a price ceiling, okay, what is the lowest pricing that can be set such that the monopolist will still stay in the market? Okay, we use the exit condition again, which is to find a point where the market price equals to average cost, okay, the exit condition. So for the price, it is represented by the demand curve, whereas the AC is simply the average cost. So we are going to find the intersection between the demand curve and the average cost curve to solve this problem. So this is why I would like to derive the average cost function here. How can I do that? Because we have the total cost function as this thing, we just divide the whole expression by Q, then we'll have the average cost as 10,006 divided by Q plus 4. Put the demand and average cost function in GeoGebra, then you'll be able to see the two intersection points between these curves. And we should take point I, because if you are trying to set a price ceiling at point H, it is actually above the profit maximizing price, so it will be ineffective. So this is why the lowest pricing that can be set would be at point I. The corresponding price is $30.43. Finally, for question 69, the government provides a per unit subsidy of $10 to the railway consumers. What will be the deadweight loss in this market? Actually, we just follow the 4 universal steps that I have outlined to you. So the step 1 is to obtain the demand curve. Because we have a per unit subsidy of $10, then we just add this to the new demand curve. Then we have the demand expression accordingly. Step 2 is to obtain the new MR curve by multiplying the coefficients in front of Q in the demand curve by 2. Okay, so we have the new MR. Step 3 is to apply the profit maximizing condition to find the profit maximizing quantity. So we just plot in everything in GeoGebra to find the intersection between the new MR and the original MC. So we have point D here. The corresponding quantity suggested by point D will give us the profit maximizing quantity, 250. And finally, step 4, to charge a monopoly price according to the new demand curve at this profit maximizing quantity. Okay, so point E will give us the new profit maximizing price, $79. And this also the price received by sellers. And if you're required to find the price paid by buyers, nothing special. It will be 79 minus a per unit subsidy of $10, or equivalently, the corresponding price as suggested by point F would give us the price paid by buyers, $69. All right, so this is about the profit maximizing quantity and price. So how can we find out the area of deadweight loss? It is simply the area constrained by the original demand and the marginal cost at the new quantity, 250. Using the polygon function in GeoGebra, you can find out the area correspondingly, the orange triangle here. The deadweight loss is 7,041.67. Likely, you may ask, why are we using the original demand but not the new demand to find out the deadweight loss? There are 2 reasons. The first rationale is that, recalling what you have learned in chapter 6 about tax and subsidies, we actually do not need to use the new curves after taxation or subsidization to find out the area of total economic surplus or deadweight loss. We use the original curve to find out the deadweight loss, right? And the second rationale is that the new demand function incorporates the per unit subsidy in addition to the willingness to pay of the consumers. However, the per unit subsidy is just actually a distribution of welfare from the government to the consumer. And it should not affect the total economic surplus of the whole society. This is why we should use the original demand curve to better reflect the willingness to pay of the consumers. Okay, so this is why we use the original demand instead of the new demand function in finding the area of deadweight loss. All right, so that's all for what I'd like to cover in this tutorial today, and it will be the time for the attendance exercise. So 5 minutes as usual, and I'll close the quizzes at 9:25. Okay, sets A and D for you to complete. So 2 minutes left for the attendance exercise, and you've already completed everything, and you're also free to leave, right? So I see some of you have already completed both sets already. time is up and I'll close the quiz now. So hope you have earned the attendance bonus points. Yeah, so see you all in the last tutorial of this course 2 days later, and thank you very much for joining the tutorial.